This is Our Stigma, Episode 5, Season 1.
Hi, this is Seth Perry. Today's episode mentions overdose death and violence. Check out our show notes for resources if you need help today. Remember, you can always dial 988 if you're in crisis. Before we begin today's episode, I want to give you the questions of the day. Ponder these throughout the episode. Here they are. Have you ever stopped to consider what drives people to live in housing encampments? What steps has your community taken to understand the root causes behind these encampments? Have you heard people in your church or community refer to them as eyesores or something similar? Now let's dive in. Today's episode takes us back to Scandia, Minnesota. And as a pastor in this rural community, there's something important I want you to understand about the context that I work in. It is a part of Washington County where you almost never see people living on the streets. And just because the need isn't visible doesn't mean it isn't real. And that's why I want to start this episode by speaking with someone from Elam Lutheran Church who has a deep heart for outreach and a clear-eyed view of the challenges faced by the unhoused. This is Loretta. You're the most active member of our congregation when it comes to outreach to the unhoused. What are some of the challenges that you face when trying to help others here understand the realities and complexities of housing insecurity?
I think probably the hardest thing is having people understand why people are experiencing homelessness, why families are. I often get the feeling from people that it's because of drugs, it's because they don't know how to handle their money, and to help them understand that there are so many reasons that people end up in the situation of homelessness.
Is that something that's uncomfortable for you to have conversations, or do you shy away from having conversations?
I don't have trouble with those conversations because these are God's people that we're talking about. They are part of our community.
Scandia is often seen as an affluent rural community where most properties sit on large acreages. In fact, some are required by the city to be on acreages over 2.5 acres large. So because of this, people facing housing insecurity in Scandia are not necessarily seen. So this fall, you stood before our congregation. You were visibly moved. You were sharing your experiences working at a shelter just 20 minutes away in northern Washington County. And on this podcast, I have talked about the urban-rural divide in Minnesota, and housing is a big part of that. How do you work to bridge that divide in your outreach work at the church?
I try by seeing if I can get people to understand that this is an issue. We may not see it. We may never run across somebody in our day-to-day life, but people are out there. They are couch hopping. They are, some of them, sleeping out in the open, sleeping in their car. And there is a need. And again, these are our neighbors. The reasons they are in this situation are so varied. Sometimes it comes down to your car breaks down. You make a choice. Do I pay my rent or do I fix my car so that I can get to work? In rural areas, there is not the transportation. You almost need a vehicle to get to a job. And if it's not working, you're going to lose your job and then you find yourself without a home.
So in Minnesota, many people resort to living in tents or makeshift shelters. And these encampments are frequently disrupted by county officials and police. I've heard a wide range of opinions from rural folks, like these encampments are eyesores, or there's no point going into the city anymore because of them, or that people living in the encampments should just get a job, or that drug use is the main issue. But why is it important to ask how someone ended up living outdoors in the first place?
You could ask me, why did I end up living where I am? It's the circumstances that brought me here, and circumstances bring people to those encampments. They're there with like people. We tend to gravitate toward people who are like us, similar to us, and some people are there because that's the life they choose. Some people are there due to mental health, chemical health. As I said before, it's a huge variety. Veterans are there because of PTSD. These are people I think of in our church. We have the throwaway Christ statue, and that was made from scraps of wood that would have been thrown away. We are all bits and pieces of a community, and we are not garbage to throw away.
What inside of you makes you emotional when you think about the people out there that may tonight not have a place indoors to sleep?
We are all valuable. We know that we are loved by Christ, and each of us need someone to care for us.
This summer, a story went viral and in the Twin Cities area, in the Twin Cities metro area, and I became very curious about it, and it related a lot to the project that I'm working on. So, almost 10 months ago, I started reaching out and got introduced to many people that were part of the Hmong community that were living in encampments this summer, and those encampments were disbanded multiple times. So I'm going to show you some videos, and then when you're done watching these videos, I'm going to get your reaction.
Get your papers. Would you like to get out of here?
Yeah, I would like to get that done.
I show
because I have
Loretta
tried
3
so hard,
videos,
but,
and in these
my
videos, the
issue
people
is
speak a
on the
mixture
back.
of English and Hmong. They talk about basic needs, like identification and an address, and a need for someone to help them navigate the system. Looking at the conditions that the people are living in and how healthy or unhealthy they look, what's your reaction?
It brings up a whole nother issue of language barriers and cultural differences that sometimes are just not addressed. There isn't the staffing to do it. There isn't the thought about doing it. Race is still definitely an issue. I know in theory it's a little better than it was. I had not that long ago a conversation just about how there is still a lot of racial inequity, and this person said, oh, well, it's all fine now. And I argued it for a while, and I finally said, we're going to have to agree to disagree, because we were both stuck on our opinions. In Scandia area, we're pretty homogenous, and it is hard to sometimes look beyond community. And if I go back to sometimes people don't want to go work at the shelter because they're afraid. They're afraid of what they don't know.
Today, we'll explore how fear can give way to compassion as we dispel myths and take a closer look at a response to mental health and addiction in the Hmong community. You'll learn about the Hmong community, how they came here, the challenges they face, and the strength they carry. We'll share a hopeful story of advocacy and meet those working to create culturally specific care for Hmong individuals facing real barriers. I'm Seth Perry, and this is Our Stigma. Hmong Americans, many of whom immigrated from Laos, represent a significant immigrant population in Minnesota, with large numbers settling in the state following 1975. Hmong Minnesotans take pride in having one of the largest Hmong communities in the U.S., Now, before diving into their history, we'll explore how Hmong people in the Twin Cities are responding to homelessness, mental health challenges, and addiction. My education began at the Community Voices Town Hall, a large forum that brought together community leaders, mental health professionals, cultural advocates, and lawmakers to address the culturally specific recovery needs of the Hmong community. Democratic State Representative Liz Lee, the daughter of Hmong refugees, offered an important reflection on religion, spirituality, and cultural healing within her community.
Acknowledging that the Hmong community has certain beliefs. We already talked about a little bit about that today. There's a big Hmong Christian community. I also think there's a space here for us to think about how we can think about how to incorporate traditional Hmong beliefs, right? So, we say when someone is sick, their spirit has left them, or their spirit is also sick. And so I think that's something that some folks have thought about. And so if your parents, right, are concerned about you, they may want to do something called like a spirit calling ceremony, right, or oneng or hupli, right? So just thinking about how you can incorporate all of that into your spiritual wellness and your recovery process, I think, is really important, because it's a whole community process, right? In our community too, there is a lot of stigma because our grandparents brought us here. They want us to do well. They want to see us succeed, and the best they can do is like yell at us, right? There's this like tough love thing, right? To just say, well, why can't you be better, right? Or whatever. But I think part of it is also our parents don't understand our struggles, right? And so they'll do the best they can, and so there's a little bit of like meeting each other halfway. We're trying to take a holistic approach, making sure that we have diverse social workers, diverse mental health providers, because that's also really important to just help clients and folks on their way to recovery.
Among the attendees on the panel was Republican State Representative Dave Baker, who was on episode 2 and 3 of Our Stigma. He shares his personal story to the attendees.
I have learned through the hard part of losing my beautiful son Dan to an overdose of addiction of an opioid, prescribed by a pain medicine that happened that we've all heard 100 times. But I just know what it's like for loved ones to lose somebody, especially a child, a spouse, a loved one. It's so hard. And to see so many people up here in recovery, I'm so proud of all of you and everybody that's out here that understands this challenge. Day to day, it's real, and you guys are alive to hear me in honor of my son. So thank you for doing this every single day. And when it comes to what have I learned, I don't know. I'm still learning every single day because we are getting around. This is my first time with the Hmong and Asian community. This is a bipartisan issue. We will always work together to save people when it comes to mental health, substance use disorder, because the stigma hits everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Baker. So with that, I just kind of want to open up the floor for any questions. I can run the microphone to you if you need to.
Cool. Bang has a question. All right.
Why is there so little culturally specific treatment programs that are geared towards the Hmong Korean population right now? Because there's about 94,000 Hmong people in Minnesota, 20,000 Korean people. I mean, I can think of probably one culturally specific treatment program right now that I can think of right now. Why do you think that there isn't more programs like that to like support our community?
Thank you. That's a great question. That's one of the reasons I'm here today. We've done a lot of work recently in the Native American community to allow them to do this. We need to hear from you more. So I want you to come to St. Paul and visit with someone like me, and you have to help educate us. But come and see us so that you keep knocking on our doors, keep doing that, and never give up. That's why we get things done. So that's the one thing I can offer is we don't know enough about what we need to do.
Then, out of nowhere, a man approaches the microphone during the Q&A. He looks like your average dad, a Hmong man wearing glasses and a gray baseball hat.
My name's Danny Yang. I'm an outreach pastor for Emmanuel Church. I've been tackling this for the homelessness for 5 years, dropping off food with my truck, clothes, money, from organization, business. It's under the radar because we don't want to expose these people because they don't want to, honestly. And it's a shame, like you guys said, shame to the community, so they don't want the clan leader to know that. So I've been there. I talked to a lot of our Hmong brothers in the home encampment. They share their struggle, their emotional, their pain. It's shame, everything from the justice system that failed them. According to them, most of them have a lot of through their child support, most of the men. All right, so they can't go back to the workforce. They have no identity. They have nothing, no home to go to. So they said, "Hey, we'd rather be here than out there in the real world, right?" So that's their community. Again, they build their community. So again, from the church standpoint, I'd like to have legislature and everybody, government, to see that. Hey, can we access those resources fast enough so we can support these people? Can we get access to that resource ASAP? Amen.
Pastor Danny Yang certainly has a story to tell, and we'll learn more about his background and his account of Hmong American history after the break. Talking about mental health and addiction stigma in faith communities shouldn't stop when the episode ends. That's why Our Stigma is more than just a podcast. It's a conversation starter. If you're a community organizer, faith leader, in recovery, or just passionate about community building, I've got a free resource just for you, the Our Stigma Podcast Educational Curriculum. It's a discussion guide designed to help you lead meaningful dialogue on mental health, recovery, and outreach in your community. You can download the Leader Guide and discussion resource today at www.ourstigma.com. That is www.ourstigma.com. Welcome back. After the town hall, I had a chance to speak to Pastor Danny Yang, and he gave me the history of his immigration to the United States.
And so my dad was a young soldier. He joined up. He was just about 17, 18. They joined the force with the United States CIA, the country, Democratic Republic, the Laos government, and they considered the Hmong people as enemies because we sided with the U.S. CIA. And so that's one of the reasons why in 1975 we couldn't no longer stay or be safe living there. And so my dad came back and took our, prepare our family and say we're going to America. And so we found our navigation through the jungle, crossed the Mekong River. Many got shot along the way. Some didn't make it because there were like infants which being shot or killed if they would capture. I was lucky enough. I was born in 1979 in March, so I was lucky enough to survive through the jungle. Yeah, and it is harsh just to survive. And crossing the Mekong River to the Thailand border, to the refugee camp. That's where it was, across the river, which is Thailand, and the refugee camp is there.
Once in America, Danny describes what it was like adjusting to life in a new country.
Came here when I was about 1 year old. I remember we would go to the Methodist church and pick up clothes, jacket, coat, whatever, earmuffs, glove, everything, boots even too. I was like, wow, this is a lot of things to wear, because we came here with barely nothing. Imagine that. We started a new life here. It was not easy. Going to school, I did not understand a single English word. I was bullied from other races too. It was like, okay, well, I didn't know what's going on. I didn't know the bad words. I didn't know what they called me, like chank, because I didn't know what chank is, right? So I was like, what is that? So my teacher was like, hey, we have a special education class for you guys. I didn't know what English second language is. So it was called ESL 1 and then 2 and then 3, right? I didn't grab on the idea until I was like about 3rd grade or 4th grade. Now that started picking up.
Danny wasn't just facing bullying and racism at school. His entire community was struggling to survive on their own, forced to rely on each other in the absence of real support.
yeah, well, we moved over here, like back in the 80s, 1980s, when we arrived, we didn't have the police support. So we had to defend ourselves first because we didn't want to rely on the police. We knew what they can do, but then we had to protect, again, back to that core value, our family. We still have to, we think like, you know, they're still soldier because they are soldier, arrived straight from Laos here. So they have to use their tactical skills to survive, to support and protect. So these provisions is the important key.
Danny says he became resourceful because of the adversity he faced when growing up in America. Many Americans who have endured similar strife may say the same thing. That's why I asked him this question. What is it like for you to see your Hmong brothers and sisters living in tents by the river and dealing with addiction?
It was 5 years ago. It moved me emotional. I was like, wow, I want to know how they ended up there. And that's why they did start questioning them and visit them, dropping off food. I will get a few pastor partnership, help me go find, pick up food from shelters or organization like churches, nonprofit. We will pick up food and ask for donation, and we drop off food for these Hmong brothers or sister in the encampment. I tell them I come in peace. I'm not working for any authority. That's what they're afraid of. I'm not there to harm them. I'm there to support them and get to know why they're there. And they start sharing their story. All different last name, like from the 18 clan.
Danny just mentioned the 18 Hmong clans. Each clan is tied to a last name. Clan leaders often help resolve conflicts, organize cultural ceremonies, and support members in times of need.
You have your Yang, your Tao, your Vang there. I was like, wow, I thought it was just, back then we're just other race, but then now we have the Hmong people in the encampment, start to develop their own encampment in the woods by the lake. Some of them got, 4 or 5 kids, which is equivalent to the child support. You can't survive on a paycheck like that to feed all 5 kids child support. You barely get nothing left. So some of them just don't want to work. Our culture is like, if you humiliate your clan, you're almost like, okay, you're not really welcome, because you didn't keep up to the standards. And so it's a disgrace or it's a shame. So when they feel shame, they turn to drug addiction or alcohol.
I think about someone who would live in the encampment and they may have an overdose, or they may get a possession charge, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say they have to then talk to their clan leader. What would they expect if they have to come to their clan leader and say, I was found and I had an overdose, and they found drugs on me, I have a possession charge. If that was to happen, can you explain what that situation would be like for them?
Well, if this person come to the clan leaders saying, I need help, they did give advice, but then they expect that person to be strong on their own and do it. So a lot of time people don't understand the mental illness, you could say that, the health issue, because a lot of them have done so much drugs, so much alcohol that it has ruined that. But somewhere, somehow in their heart, they still cry for hope. And I seen that. They're not totally a disaster. No, they are human beings, right? They're human beings. They have heart. They have condition. They cry. When we go out there, we pray for them. You see some on video. We don't want to show too much on that, but they cry.
One thing that Danny made abundantly clear to me, the Hmong people he works with in the encampments have created a community. This is a concept that I want every listener to this podcast to consider. Encampments are concentrated dwellings of tents and structures. No tent is isolated on its own. These encampments are communities. For a clinical look at how housing and mental health are connected, we are going to check in again with Dr. Steve Delisi.
Everyone needs safe, stable housing. Until that is a reality, we do have encampments, and community, and very real community, can exist within those encampments. And you speak of the Hmong community and their ability to create community. Community is hardwired into us as humans. I believe it to be how we have been developed and wired to be. And someday maybe we can do a podcast on how important connection and attachment is to the healing of the human self. Disruption of community is a re-traumatization of these communities who have experienced multiple prior traumas. It is in the direct opposite effect of healing and wholeness. It can't be perpetuated. We do in fact need to stop that.
Well, here's the problem. When an encampment is disrupted, then the community of people living there are disbanded. Outreach workers then have to spend time tracking down where people have recongregated. This has been happening a lot lately, and that is why I'm back at the Capitol to discuss this issue with Jeremy Drucker. I met you at the Hmong Recovery Town Hall, a large event in the Hmong recovery community, and this event happened only days after the Bruce Vento encampment was disbanded, and there was a high population of Hmong residents there, and many of those residents had built relationships and community in those encampments, which may not be popular with many Minnesotans. That is something that they've identified as a method of support, that they've met people in encampments, that they feel like they've built relationships that are important for their future. But 8 Twin Cities homeless encampments have been disbanded in the last 60 days, and these encampments will not stop forming. So who's responsible then for finding long-term solutions that address the needs for those unhoused? Because sometimes I'll hear that there's a federal government issue, that it's a municipal or a state or a county. So who should be taking the lead on assisting these individuals find housing and also find mental health and addiction services?
Yeah, it's a really important but a tough issue. You're dealing, as you said, you're dealing with folks with oftentimes very acute behavioral health issues, oftentimes co-occurring substance use and mental health issues, housing instability. I think, we really need to approach these with compassion, with understanding again, kind of that connection piece. I think one of the things, though, that we've learned historically, too, in places like South Minneapolis is that these can also become places that, because of their nature, attract a violent, chaotic element that can lead to some very dangerous situations. And so I think we really need to be mindful about not just the public health impacts, but also the public safety impacts, and not give up on trying to find people that appropriate care, stable housing, and those pieces. As to your question around whose responsibility of it, it's really a joint responsibility between the city, the county, the state, and our federal partners to really bring the different resources we have to bear to address the issue. And I know that this kind of gets as a government-y answer, but it's just the reality of how things work, is we all have kind of a different role in the system. And so the county has a specific role around the delivery of human services. The city has a specific role around maintaining public safety, around maintaining some of the land issues when they're on city land. The state has a role in terms of our policy and funding mechanisms. And so it really calls on us to work together to address this issue, to be partners in this, to not point the finger at one another, but to really say, okay, let's sit down, let's work with the community too, let's invite them to the table and make sure that their voices are there, and let's co-create solutions together on what is going to work to help move people out of these situations into a more healthy situation that can begin a recovery journey for them.
Here's the last question. So you are a person in long-term recovery, and we're both two people in long-term recovery speaking together about an important issue. And I want you to just consider everything that our nation, state, our cities, our counties, our communities face regarding mental health and addiction recovery. Issues from the mosque to the synagogue to the church to the farm to reservations to clans in the Hmong community and to tribal allegiances, all the cultures that represent our state here, and all these different contexts. And you know it so well working in the position that you do, and you're guiding policies for something that is really personal for you as well. So the question is, what gives you hope in the work you're doing right now?
So what gives me hope in the work that I'm doing is I love the recovery community. I love people in recovery. Like, they are my people. When I was first in recovery, I was in a meeting. It was the first meeting I went to. I was doing an outpatient at Hazelden, and I was kind of confused. I didn't really know what I was doing there, and people were going around the circle saying, hi, my name's, whatever, and I'm an alcoholic. And it got to me, and I said, my name's Jeremy, and I guess I'm an alcoholic because I'm sitting right here. And everybody laughed. And at that moment, like, I felt like I was in a room full of my people, and we all looked different. There were rich people and poor people and white people and brown people and all kinds of different people, but we were, in our recovery, we were together. And it's kind of like, and I believe in all pathways to recovery, but Alcoholics Anonymous was really a big part of my recovery journey, especially early, and I love that part of the big book where they talk about how we are the survivors of the shipwreck, and when you're in that position, all of the other things kind of fall away, and you are bound together sort of by that experience, and it's a feeling that it's never entirely left me. And I think we're in a country and in a place where there's a lot of things that are trying to divide us and separate us. But the recovery community is a place where we are all together: Democrats, Republicans, rural, urban, rich, poor, black, white. That is a place where when people in recovery get together, like, we share that experience, strength, and hope. And that is the most important thing for us. And I think the gift of recovery to me, which I think is also what binds us together, is that it allowed me to really get in touch with myself and who I am as a person and my values and my life and my personal connections to whatever my culture was, whatever my dreams and hopes and desires are. And when that kind of rubble gets cleared away and you get that gift of clarity to be in touch with yourself, no matter what it is, just that connection is a bond that we share across the recovery community. And I can respect other people in the recovery community who may have different opinions or have a different connection with themselves, but that clarity that we have in that recovery is a really powerful feeling. And I think that the more we can have that feeling, call it a spiritual quality, call it whatever you want, I think the more that we can spread that even to people who aren't in recovery, the better off we're all going to be as a country.
We'll be speaking with someone who is spreading the message of recovery across the Hmong community in the Twin Cities, and you'll hear his compelling story after the break. The Our Stigma podcast is produced by Good Faith Media, a reliable resource contributing to conversations at the intersection of faith and culture. My friends at Good Faith Media use multiple media platforms. Their flagship podcast is Good Faith Weekly, hosted by Mitch and Missy Randall. Each week, the co-hosts discuss current events and issues, engage the lighter side, and interview faith leaders from around the world. Learn more about the podcast and the nonprofit Good Faith Media at goodfaithmedia.org. Welcome back. Bringing people in the recovery community together to share what we have in common is key, and one Hmong organization has been doing just that. In fact, this organization has made this entire episode possible, from the town hall featured earlier in this episode to the very next interview you're about to hear. I'm talking about an organization called Hmong Recovery, the very first Hmong recovery community organization. And this is one of their founders, Moua. First of all, where were you born?
Thailand.
Thailand, yeah.
In the refugee camp.
Wow.
Yeah.
When did you immigrate here?
I came here in 1990 when I was 5, in the middle of winter. Cold and freezing.
For you to see snow that like the first time and to feel how cold it was here.
Okay, yeah, getting off the airplanes, coming to that cold blast, it's like you can feel that chill through your bone. When I was at that age, we went outside. And, all that yellow snow on the curb, right? Me and my older brother, right, we thought that it was like ice cream.
No, man.
We thought it was ice cream, so we walked to the curb and we picked it up. And we ate it, right?
welcome to America.
Yeah, it was super salty. We were like, this tastes nothing like the ice cream they trying to serve us in Thailand.
Oh my gosh. Wow, man. So you immigrate here, you become a part of the Hmong community here, huge Hmong community here, second largest in all of the United States. But then you end up finding yourself in need of recovery. So what happened?
So when we first came over here, you know, like, it's a lot of cultural shocks, right? Like coming from a refugee camp, a third world countries that is very poor into a very wealthy country and very electronics, or like say it's like a Wi-Fi or a sci-fi movie where everything is just like lights and everything, right? But like if you go through the history of Hmong, you know, we are like survival, right? We're always like been conquered, been killed, and then we run. And then we live off of survival. The way that I grew up, you know, my parents, they didn't speak a single word of English word, so they didn't know how to help me with my homework. They didn't know how to take us to go do like family events because we were poor, we don't have money. They were uneducated. It was hard to get around when they don't even know how to drive. They can't get their license and stuff like that. So it was a very difficult time, a hard time. And then by the age of 12, there's a lot of abandonment issues that I didn't know how to deal with, or my parents, they didn't know how to go seek like mental health for us, because they'd be gone, like, because we have to grow up. Me and my older brother, we have to grow up so fast that by that age, we have to go home, come home, and take care of our little brother and sisters, especially in the summertime when they know that we're off school and they have to go to work for like 12 to 14 hours a day. And what does kid do at that age, right? Without no parents around for many hours of the days. And that's how I got introduced into like the gang life. It was because, like, you know, I feel like I was being neglected by my parents, but I didn't have the understanding of why they have to like go to work so much. So I went and found like acceptance and love with the gang, right? And that's where I got introduced into marijuana. And that's why I started using a lot of weed and started, you know, drinking a lot because of gang activities, started doing a lot of criminal activities. And by the time that I was in high school, I was like a full-blown substance users. But when I got into my senior years in high school, my life changes. My biological dad, he passed away because of strokes and heart attacks, and he died like a day right after my 18th birthday. And that's when I got into methamphetamines, and that changed my whole life. That changed my whole world. That brought me into like dark places. And then, you know, I didn't graduate high school, so I just took off from home, trying to go live on my own, start selling drugs. And I did that all the way until like I was the age of 23. And I caught my big case in Wisconsin. And it was just simple as like a traffic stops that turned into a 7-year bit. And then when I get out in 2015, I was doing good, you know. I was doing good for 6 months, and then all of that behavior, all of that addiction feelings and triggers and cravings started coming in back in because I never take care of it. And after 6 months, I started using again, and then that led to going back to selling drugs. And then not even too long after that, you know, it was only another, like, I believe it was only like 6 months that I was on the run for. And I finally got caught up, and I went and did my second bit. And then I told everybody, like, look, man, when I get out, I'm gonna, like, not to boast, but I tell everybody that I knew that I was associated in prison. I was like, look, when I get out, I'm gonna try and become the biggest, one of the biggest, like, Hmong drug dealer in the Twin City, right? And that's what my goal is. I didn't even think about taking care of myself in prison. I didn't even think about, like, hey, I should enroll into, like, mental health or go into, like, treatment in prison. I was like, screw that. I'm gonna become a drug dealer, one of the biggest one if I can. I got out in 2019, and I got connected with, like, you know, Mexican cartel, and I started pushing a lot of weights. And then what changes the most is that, in October of 2020, my stepdad and my biological mom, they passed away due to COVID a week apart. So I was in that stage of like so broken and darkness where I didn't want to tell people my emotion. Like I remember from like sunrise to sunset, I'll be waking up using, drinking, smoking weed just to hide my pain. And then something miracle, I call it a miracle now because of my faith, and then like 2 months later, December, my son's mom, she called me, she's like, hey, you got a son. I was like, you tripping? I was like, you tripping? I was like, I wasn't with you for the last 9 months. How can I have a son? She's like, well, it's yours. So I asked for a paternity test, and it sure it is. Came back 99.9% that it's mine. But at that time, I wanted to change, and like a lot of the time, like all that words that my mom and my dad, they used to yell at me, or they used to tell me or preach to me that, hey, you don't know how much we love you, you don't know how much we do for you, but the day that you have your own kid, you will understand what we saying or what we mean. And those words creep in my head, like, oh, so this is how much my parents, they love me. And at that moment, I was like, I need to change. I want to change. This time when I would walk into Ramsey County, I was like, what is this teen challenge? I was like, I was asking around. They say, oh, it's a Christian-based treatment place where they help you with your addictions and God. I was like, but I don't believe in God. But I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna put the application in because it's a way out of jail. I was like, it's a way out of jail. I want to change, so I put in my application in. Teen Challenge accepted me, and I didn't fully commit it to God until 6 months into the program.
So you started your journey of recovery, but you still experienced the stigma. So tell me some stories about that.
Mental health is not like talked about enough in like the Hmong community, or it's just in denial. And substance use disorder is like a taboo topics. Hmong people, I think we're just prideful, and they just like to me, I see like they like to ignore issues that is very affect the community, or they don't want the community, they don't want the Hmong people to look bad, saying that, hey, this is not Hmong issues. But to me, I say that it is Hmong issues. If we're living in America, if we're adapting to the American life, then it is going to become Hmong issues just like the American too. If we don't start to break the stigma, or we don't start to talk about these mental health or the SUD components of things, it's just going to get worse. And why? If you go down to like these encampment in Ramsey County, if you look at the demographic or the population size, say compared to Black American or Caucasians that are in the encampments, the population ratio is that Hmong is more than those. So what is going on here? And that's kind of like the issue, is that these individuals that I encounter down there, they never deal with a lot of stuff that I deal with because of the pride and because of the shame and the guilt and the non-supported from their family, or the lack of education or lack of resource for like the elders to go and seek help for their loved ones, or they don't understand, or they don't know where to go get these resources, or they don't know how to go find these resources, or it may be even just a cultural clash or cultural pride that, hey, we don't need help. But to me, we do need help, because like in the encampment, there's more Hmong than any other race down there.
And part of it has to do with really being excommunicated from your family, mm-hmm. right? So there's this clan structure. You've got the 18 clans, and if there are particular issues that happen within family members that are related to substance abuse or mental health issues, they may be out of their home, right? Yes. Okay, so you started to do something about it. You've been in the encampments.
Yes.
And what can be done culturally to heal the divide with clan leaders.
I believe that, it's all started from like the elders, right? Because in the Hmong community right now, I say that 80% still Shaoism, Shaoman, or the other 20 is Christian. Whatever the elder says to the community seems to listen to it. So if the elders does not educate the uneducated Hmong populations, then that trend will just continues to move on. And I also say that, to like the Hmong community, I really want to emphasize that, when your loved one go through this kind of stages, just don't abandon them. And this is a lot of cases that I see, is that when you get to that stages of substance use disorder, then your parents or your loved one just kind of like abandon you, because due to a cultural stigma that you're going to bring shame to the family, you're going to bring bad raps to your clan names, and that's what happens to me.
So we have these housing encampments, and they keep getting moved around, right? They spring up like the big one that went viral at Bruce Vento. And so that whole group of people, a lot of them were saying, we want to stick together. We're Hmong people. We know each other. We want to stick together. We want to continue on, because we know each other and we're from the same culture.
Yeah. When they're together, they feel protective of each other. They feel connected, because that's how, like, even like in the refugee camps, Hmong people kind of live in that kind of hut style. And a lot of them still very like adapt to that hut style living, right? And the reason why I believe that they want to stay in that kind of environment is just it's a cultural thing. It's like it's a culture that we grew up together. We always live in like a close, tight-knit community like that. And I go and support them, and I talk to them, and they all say that we live like this. It's because we have been abandoned, disowned by our family. Our loved one, they don't want to support us. They don't know how to support us no more. They don't know how to talk to us. They always just like lecture or compare us or degrading us and saying that we're bringing a bad raps to their name. And that's in the encampment, that's where they felt loved, because they all have that issues. They all have that grief. They all have that emotional and mental health components where they are similarity, where they're going through the same thing. So that's where they find comfort, is in that encampment.
From the encampments to the Capitol, from the church basements to the halls of the legislature, the Hmong recovery community is not only surviving, it's organizing, building, and leading. As you've heard today, healing is happening in real time, and it's being shaped by culture, history, and the courage to speak up against tradition. The most important revelation in this episode is we need each other. We need collaboration. That's why next episode on Our Stigma will bring the voices of this series together around one table. People with lived experience will join me for a roundtable discussion, sharing what they've learned, what's changed for them, and what is still left unsaid. And if you've been with us on this journey, you won't want to miss the conversation we've all been building toward. This episode of Our Stigma was produced by Cliff Vaughn from Good Faith Media, with support from Mitch Randall and Callie Chisholm. Audio provided by Pond 5. Special thanks to Sean and Rolando from Washington County and Diane from M Health Fairview. Special thanks to Representative Liz Lee, Representative Dave Baker, Pastor Danny Yang, Dr. Steve Delisi, Jeremy Drucker, and Moua from Hmong Recovery for their voices, stories, and leadership. And thanks to Loretta from Elam Lutheran Church. We're grateful for Hmong TV and St. Paul Studios for the use of their clips in this episode. I'm Seth Perry, the host, writer, and creator of Our Stigma. If this episode moved you, please consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or sharing the show with someone who might need it. You can also find me on YouTube at Our Stigma. You can find our full discussion guide and educational material for this episode at ourstigma.com. That's www.ourstigma.com. See you in episode 6 for the roundtable discussion.